Hello, everyone. My name is Jadira Rivera. I am a Hartford resident and also the executive director of the Know Thy Neighbor initiative here in the city. But today I am the moderator for the forum. Welcome to the Universal Basic Income Community Forum, where you will meet and get to hear from the UBI task force and also have the opportunity to ask questions, share your feedback that can also help the task force in their next steps. So now I am going to ask the task force members to please introduce themselves. And I'll start with Gina.
Thank you, Jadira. My name is Dr. Gina Rossage. I'm assistant professor at the University of St. Joseph Department of Social Work and Equitable Community Practice.
Thank you. Welcome. Nice to meet you.
Likewise.
Caroline?
Hi, everyone. I'm Carolyn Anderson. I actually work for Anthem Blue Cross. And just quickly, my connection to Hartford is this will be our 15th year where we've run a program that gives Hartford kids a chance to give holiday gifts to their families. We collaborated with the Boys and Girls Club for 7 years in the Hartford schools for the past 7 years.
Oh, wonderful. Nice to meet you. Welcome.
Nice to meet you too. Thank you.
Colleen?
Hi, my name is Colleen Bennett. Been a Hartford resident for a long time, involved in the community, and I work for the state of Connecticut.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you.
Is there any other member? I'm not sure if I see any other member on.
I think that's it. We do have a comment if everyone can just say where they live. Or, what city you call home.
Sure, Gina, you can start.
Oh, well, I technically live in West Hartford, but I am right at the border of the west end of Hartford. Like, literally look out my window.
Caroline?
I live in Killingworth, which is a town very few people have heard of, but it's down toward the shore.
And Colleen?
I live in the north end of Hartford.
Great, thank you so much. I am now going to pass it over to Gina, who will show and share a PowerPoint for us today.
Thank you, Jadira. I created a PowerPoint to help guide our agenda today. And I look forward to folks helping me in reviewing it. Are you able to see it?
Yep, it's coming through for me.
Okay, is it one slide or two?
It's just the one slide.
Excellent. All right. So we thought it would be important to start at the beginning. Begin at the begin. And maybe David, you can talk a little bit about the resolution.
Sure. So before I talk about the resolution, I just wanted to do a general introduction for the folks that don't know me. My name is David Grant. I work for the city of Hartford under Council President Molly Rosado. I also live here in the city. I'm currently at the Colt building with my husband, Chris, and I'm very excited to be helping to spearhead this program as I see a lot of benefit to our residents from this. So thank you all for being here, and I'm looking forward to working with more folks from the community over the course of the next 6 months. So this initiative really started for us last year. It was the June, July months of 2020. We were already in the pandemic, and we were already hearing from folks who were struggling with paying their bills. They had been let go, restaurants were closed, businesses were shut down, and many residents were concerned. They have families and they had no way of paying for their essential goods. And, because of the state's unemployment system, they were bogged down. We helped many residents navigate the unemployment system, but we recognized right away that this just was not good enough. Even for folks that were going to be getting unemployment, it just was, there was something that we needed to do here in the city to, provide more of a safety net for residents. And so at the time, there were a couple folks in the community who were trying to educate not just Hartford, but the entire state of Connecticut on mayors for guaranteed income. And council president heard of this, and she asked me to do some more research into it. And after reviewing some articles, talking to community leaders that were really behind this initiative, ultimately we determined to take it on. We knew that it was going to take some time. We knew that it was going to take some money. And so we couldn't just launch a UBI program, but we did want to lay the foundation so that we can get in community input. We could develop an equitable program, and we could, determine what best course of action for us to move forward on this. So we decided to create a task force that would essentially design our program, create a sustainability plan, and that's kind of where we're at now. We started with this resolution specifically. Initially, some council members signed on before it was actually passed. More council members signed on. And, at this point, we're full throttle. So we're very eager to get this going. But it all started with a resolution. City of Hartford Council needed to submit a resolution, get it passed in order to officially launch this effort.
Thank you, David. And to the point of the resolution, it serves as our mandate, if you will, in terms of what we are putting together. And I know that there were some questions on Facebook that filtered my way. And so we wanted to make sure that folks in the community know that the Court of Common Council creates the task force to develop the UBI pilot program, and that they determined that they would target working single mothers and fathers. And so that's where we are starting, and that everyone was appointed by the council president. All right. So these are the current members who are appointed. This may change. And I just want to point out that we come from a variety of backgrounds, a variety of professional backgrounds, interest, things that we're interested in, the reasons why we want to get involved, right? Our identities are different, but we all have one thing in common, which is how to create this program in a way that will inform how we'll best serve Hartford residents. I feel very strongly myself that we are accountable to the folks of the city of Hartford, and not a bunch of people just coming in and telling people things, right? That we are in partnership with the community to develop this program and to do our best to develop good information that will advise the city of Hartford and the state of Connecticut and elsewhere about the usefulness, efficacy, advisability of UBI programs, and this one in particular.
Yeah, I think that, just to piggyback a little bit on that, part of why we feel that this work is important is because there are other cities in Connecticut who want to launch something similar. And so we feel that by developing a robust, comprehensive, equitable program, it could potentially serve as a template for other cities. And our hope is that if we were to be successful in this program in Hartford and other cities were to adopt something similar, then potentially we could then lobby state leaders to provide more substantial support and resources for other cities who also want to provide the safety net for their residents.
Thank you, David. Costanza, I see your question. I don't know where they live. I'm sorry. I didn't ask. Good question. So this was a slide that was created by Mally Rosado in terms of some of the goals, which David has just mentioned. And so I really want to focus more on, she actually has some things that people did with the funds from the Stockton study, and I will get into that in a little greater detail later on. But for folks who may not be fully familiar with what a universal basic income or guaranteed income program is, It is an unrestricted payment provided in cash on a regular basis. Usually that's monthly. And you know, depending on the program, they identify the group of people that they want to include. But the main thing is that there are no spending mandates. Unlike food stamps, you know, SNAP benefits, which must go towards food, or a Section 8 voucher that must go towards housing, right? Where the state, if you will, the benefits, the people running the benefits tell you how to spend the funds. This is an opportunity for folks receiving the money to have a sense of agency and make choices, you know, because they're grown adults making choices about their households. And so fundamentally, it is a program that starts from the basis of respect for people in making decisions in their own best interest with funds. And the idea is to create an economic floor. So you can't drop any lower than that, right? And I know on Facebook, someone had said something about guaranteed income versus universal basic income. We're using the term universal basic income because that was what was in the initial resolution, basically. And the only real difference is in terms of who can qualify in terms of those two terms. It's important for us to make sure people know that it's not meant to replace existing social safety net benefits. The idea is to supplement them. We know that folks live on what's called a benefits cliff. We know that folks live on a very tight margin where if they get $1 more, they could lose their benefits. And the amount that they get is just never quite enough to feel, you know, economically secure. And so we want to ensure that we're able to supplement what people are receiving if they're receiving anything. So the Hartford project is going to focus on working single parent families, and we're still figuring out eligibility and recruitment. One of the things that we have definitely learned through others who are doing this work is that we cannot include anyone who receives SSI, because there's no way for us to protect people on SSI from losing their funds. And that's very, very important to us. We want to make sure that people aren't worse off as a result of being in this program. And the other piece is we're still figuring out about people who are court involved with child support payments. I have been in touch with child support enforcement, and they have given us one suggestion for how to include folks that would require the approval of a judge. So we have to further investigate that. But for right now, we're considering that as another possibility of not including people. Other than that, the idea is that we will recruit folks once we figure out the full inclusion and exclusion criteria, who we're looking for, who we cannot include, and then randomly choose people based on that. So people will apply, and then we'll make sure, you know, there's like a screener. There'll be a screener with questions to make sure that people meet the criteria. And then, you know, there are like computer programs that can randomly choose among those people so that there isn't a bias on the part of the researchers or other people involved, right? We won't know, we won't be able to say, oh, it's my friend, we want them involved, right? That would be totally unethical. So I want to make it clear that that's not how this works. When you say unrestricted funds, go ahead, David.
Sorry, Gina, before we move on, I just wanted to make one point. So obviously city council is, you know, the driving force behind this task force and our work. We know that there's a lot of need in the city of Hartford. I field this question at least once or twice a week from residents who call our office, you know, wanting to know more about universal basic income. The idea is that initially we just were limited on resources. And so the pilot specifically will target single mothers and fathers, but we hope that if we can secure additional funding, then obviously we can expand on the number of folks that we're able to help. But make no mistake, we know that this is nowhere near what it could be or what it should be. This is merely a stepping stone towards a more comprehensive program that would involve many, many, many more Hartford residents.
And David, to piggyback on that, the reason why people do pilot studies is to provide evidence in order to promote policies that expand these kinds of policies. So that's, we need to start somewhere to demonstrate what good this can do, right? That it can do good and what kinds of good it can do. And so, you start with a small pilot in the hopes that you get quality information to promote a larger program. And there are sources of funding that I'm starting to learn about in terms of creating a larger program, which I will share with David and for us to, I'm sure he's looking at things too. Sorry. Anyway, I just wanted to further talk about the question about unrestricted. What do you mean by unrestricted? There are going to be certain qualifications. There are going to be certain things that participants will need to do on a regular basis in reporting, right? Because we can't talk about outcomes if we don't ask people things. So to begin with, this process must start with informed consent. Anyone who joins the program who's asked to participate will be provided full details and the opportunity to ask questions in order to decide if they want to participate. And we will not be instructing people what to do with the funds. We will be asking people what they did with the funds, right? What was their decision making? And we're also looking at developing a series of questions to learn about all the ways in which this UBI model impacts their lives. So that means we're going to have like interview questions, open-ended questions. We'll have certain kinds of surveys. The Stockton study, for example, asked people to do a mood questionnaire around depression and anxiety, and then logged specific categories of ways that people spent their money. And so those are just two examples of the kinds of things that we're going to ask. We will also ask for certain kinds of demographic information to help us better understand differences. That will include things like age, race, gender, gender identity, sexual orientation, how many hours of work people, full-time job, part-time job, multiple part-time jobs, just as some examples of the kinds of things that we will be asking people so that we can best learn if there are differences. If we have people who speak their first language is something other than English, we're going to want to know if there's any difference between folks in that regard, for example. So in addition, some people we're looking at creating what you call a randomized control trial if we're able to get the funds for that, which would mean that some folks would receive the benefits every month. Other people would not receive the benefits, but would be compensated just for participating in the study to answer certain kinds of questions so that we have a comparison of how people fared who received the funds and people who didn't receive the funds, right? And that's one way that you show that it made a difference. And then we may ask a third group to participate, but not provide a lot of information, just have access to administrative data. And that includes things like information from the labor market or educational data like testing scores, things like that. Because we're interested in the welfare of the family that includes the parent and the kids, right? So is that clear so far? Does anybody want to add anything to what I have put here so far?
No, I just want to say that thank you so much for everyone for the questions. We're getting in a lot. So I'm responding to all of that. This is good though. Thank you so much, Gina.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question.
Yeah.
How are you looking to identify the participants? Are you looking for like referrals from different organizations and agencies in the city?
So that's one thing that we are still trying to figure out and would like feedback from folks in the community about the best ways to recruit potential participants. One way could be, flyers in the community, word of mouth, that's called snowball sampling. Another way is to directly approach folks through administrative data, for example, people who were previously on TANF or people who receive SNAP benefits or something along those lines, right? So we're exploring all of those options right now to determine what's going to be the best way. And I definitely want to hear if people have ideas about how best to reach people in the community to get folks to sign up.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you for that question. Just to reiterate a point that David made earlier, across the United States, UBI is really gaining traction. This was a tweet from Supervisor Matt Haney, but there are other places, right? Stockton, California, Jackson, Mississippi. There are projects now in Nashville, Tennessee, Arlington, Virginia, Denver, Colorado. There are some that are not publicly available yet, but are starting up, right? They're still like in process like we are. And it's really, really exciting. And if anyone remembers when Andrew Yang ran for president, he was basically doing his own UBI study by giving people $1,000 a month. So, and I think that was part of what got things into a greater public dialogue, maybe. So, so here's just some examples. Again, Mallory Rosado provided this slide with some information on different places. The state of Alaska has actually had a UBI program for a very long time. And the residents of the state of Alaska see it as an entitlement. They see it like we see Social Security retirement benefits. Even though there are places that are pushing back and saying, how can you do this? Alaska is saying, no, we have a right to this, and other places should do it too. So it's very, very interesting to see how they have made that institutional part of life in that state. And the ball got rolling based on interest in the Stockton study. And so I thought it would be, we in the committee thought it would be a good idea to share some of the findings from the Stockton study to give people a sense of like what kinds of things can you learn from this kinds of project. Because I don't know about you, but if I hear, hey, I could get an extra $500 a month, it's a little bit of a no-brainer that life will be easier, right? Or less hard. And so we need more details to substantiate that. And so guaranteed income reduces income volatility, right? People on a month-to-month basis fluctuate. You might sweat it out. Am I going to pay my bills? Am I going to have enough money for food? Do I need to pick up an extra shift, right? That smooths some of that anxiety out because you have more predictability in your income. And it enabled people to actually find full-time employment and created new opportunities. One of the things that I'm interested in as a researcher and as a social worker is myth building, because I hear all the time people, naysayers, saying things, oh, people are going to use this money for drugs, or they're not going to work because why should you work if you're getting money, blah, 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 right? The fact of the matter is I find those kinds of thoughts antithetical to my understanding of how people are and the values of social work profession. So that's for myself, for my own profession. But to basically show that one of the things they found was that people were able to become more financially secure, right? You have more time to find a full-time job if you're not working your third side gig to try to make ends meet, right? You can use the time in different ways. And so we want to know how people use their time differently when they know they have this extra money coming in. People found that it created new opportunities for self-determination and risk-taking and goal setting. And I have a slide that talks more about those choices. But also really, really important for me as a social worker is that the recipients were physically healthier and were less depressed and anxious. and had overall better well-being as a result of this a guaranteed income in the Stockton project, right? And when people are less depressed and more anxious, man, the kids are going to benefit from that too, right? And our whole community is going to benefit from that as a result. So
It appears
yeah.
you have a quick question from Doreen.
Okay.
Doreen, go ahead. You can unmute yourself.
Hi, I apologize. I have oatmeal in my mouth. So I have a PhD in public policy, and I just appeared on the scene. I read about it in the Hartford News. And I'm familiar with the Stockton project. And also my first career, I was director of New Hampshire's largest child care program. So like you, Gina, I come from a research background. I won a statewide competition in New Hampshire for developing a strategy to measure how some school districts achieve traumatic assessment test gains.
Wonderful.
So when I listen, I'm thinking, is that it's really, like in my mind, I'm thinking that you're investigating the potential of providing guaranteed supplements, that this is a pilot to investigate that potential.
That is correct.
Thank you. And it seems that in that way that it would have to have a random sample.
Right. That's correct.
And with a control group.
Right. So in order to have a random sample with a control group, we need to have enough funds to compensate the folks in the control groups. And the Stockton study had an active and a passive control group, in addition to what they call the treatment group.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So do you have a figure in mind, or like how much they spent, how much this would have to generate?
We are still working on that. If you have ideas.
Well, can I get in touch with you outside of this? I was so interested hearing you speak.
David Grant has posted his email address as the public face for receiving information for questions as a beginning process.
Sure.
So by all means. And then my email address is grossage@usj.edu.
Wait. GROSICH at
usj.edu. I just realized I can only, I'm sorry. I typed it in the chat and it only went to the panelists. Okay. So I just sent you my university email address. And just to keep in mind that while I am the only faculty member here today, the only researcher here today, that there are other folks who are part of the committee, and that it is not my decision, right?
Sure.
I'm just here representing to provide some information and get community feedback, because community feedback is really important as part of this process, and that things are still being developed. So
yeah, we'll connect offline. Okay, Doreen?
Yep.
All right, thank you.
Thank you so much. So I just want to share a little bit more about the Stockton study. Funds were paid on a prepaid debit card around the 15th of every month. And recipients, like I said, answered interview questions, completed surveys, right, and reported their spending via text messages. But also the researchers were able to see the vendors where the money from the card was spent when people used the card to spend, as opposed to withdrawing the cash. So there were multiple ways for them to receive the information they needed in the study. And guess what was the number one thing people spent money on? Food, right? Other than that, I don't have a complete list, but rent and common household bills, transportation, medical, self-care. Self-care included a variety of things. One person talked about being able to get a birthday cake for their kid, okay? That really speaks volumes for what self-care means in taking care of your family. Participants were less reliant on borrowing from friends and family, turning to payday lenders and pawn shops, and buying cheaper, unhealthy food in order to stretch their food budget, right? So we're interested to know, are people making different food choices as a result? Not only are people spending the money on food, but have their choices around the kinds of food they buy changed as a result of having this extra income? So that's some of the kind of qualitative questions that we have. And people were also freer to spend their time on meaningful relationship activities, right? When you are, when you're worried about money, when you're worried about your budget, sometimes it just takes over everything else, right? It's your only focus from morning to night. How am I going to make sure I have food in my kids' mouths, that we have a roof over our head, that I can pay for prescriptions or whatever else the case may be? And when people are able to move away from that stress, even for a little while, your relationships with other people improves in many ways. So I am very interested to see how relationships with people's kids change. Are you able to spend more quality time with your kids as a result, right? What other people in your support network, hobbies, right? Are you able to like write poetry? Somebody said that they wrote poetry. Those are all stress relieving activities that lead to better mental health and physical health outcomes, right? So those were some of the things that they found in the Stockton study. And
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I just want you and just to see if you could share a little bit about, I know of a lot of participants who are a little hesitant to participate in any programs that will give them any kind of benefits due to worry that their other benefits are going to be affected and whether or not they're going to lose a lot to gain a little, and it will, make them struggle a lot more. Can you share a little bit about that?
Jadira, this is at the forefront of my mind and something that we are very concerned about with this program. And that's why we're going to have this informed consent process, right? One of the things that the Stockton study did was they had benefits counselors. So we have started looking at community resources to identify an organization that can provide benefits counseling, so that people can ask those kinds of questions around, will my benefits be at risk if I am involved in this program? Another thing that the Stockton and other UBI programs have done, which we are also going to look at, is, well, first of all, finding a way to have the funds from the UBI be considered a monthly gift. And there is a carve out where when you have a monthly gift, it's not considered a formal source of income. And therefore you can use that to still qualify for things like Section 8 and SNAP benefits and Medicaid and so on, right? And one of the things that I learned just today, I'm just gonna flip to my notes here since you asked this, is that they had a legal opinion rendered to substantiate that this is a gift. And a formal letter was written up that people could provide their case manager or whoever it was that, was requalifying them when they had to recertify for benefits and things like that. And then David is going to work behind the scenes to develop relationships with the various entities to give them a heads up and get their cooperation as much as possible in this endeavor, so that people aren't even, hopefully, and many people might not be even questioned in the first place, right? So we can't prevent that. There's always going to be some eager people quick to try to kick people off of a program. And so we're very, very, very concerned to make sure that nobody loses their benefits. Nobody should be worse off as a result of being in this program. So we're very committed to that. That's why, actually, one of the reasons why Colleen had asked about folks who are involved with family court around child support, because it's not just a parent receiving funds from somebody else. What they explained to me is that it's a relationship between two people and a shared household economy, if you will, right? When parents split up, they still share certain economics around their kid or kids. And so there you have to get a ruling from a judge. And so that's why we're treading very lightly to figure out if that's something that we're going to be able to do. Does that answer your question?
Yes, but I also would suggest maybe reaching out to some of the groups that are already working on different tools to be able to use in order to help with, you know, the benefits cliff. So maybe like the 2Gen group, and we could talk a little bit offline. But definitely researching and getting to know people who are already working to help, you know, those individuals not fall down the cliff.
Well, to be honest, that's exactly one of the reasons why we wanted to have this forum, right? So that we can learn more about who will be the best people in the community to support the members of the community through this endeavor. So I'm really, really thankful, you know, you have knowledge that I don't have, you know?
Great, and I could definitely connect you to the right people.
Wonderful. Oh, I love it. Thank you. So, in terms of other outcomes that people talked about, freedom, right? They were able to leave abusive situations. You know, sometimes people stay in a job because they're terrified of leaving that job, right? But it's terrible where they are. So knowing that they could float for like while they're looking for something else was hugely beneficial. Some people left abusive relationships as a result of this, which I think is, even if that was the only outcome, it's an excellent outcome. You know what I mean? And then there were other kinds of freedoms that, again, people were able to get full-time employment because they were able to make decisions about their time and about like getting further training or things like that, right? They were better able to deal with emergencies and support members of their network, right? They had extra food, maybe like they could include another person at the dinner table, right? You may not be borrowing money from your relatives or friends anymore. And then, you know, when they're stuck, you could still lend them something. Or if nobody's lending to the other, like you have your full budget, right? For like maybe the first time in ages. And then the emotional availability that comes with not stressing, right? So when your bestie calls you up because they're, you know, they're really stressed about something, you're able to focus your attention on that loved one and not have like half an ear on, oh, but I still got to worry about whether I can afford to get milk, right? So I think that those are really important outcomes for us to look at whether that's going to be true here in Hartford. And then back to the point that in regards to your question, is that we as the committee members are looking for specific feedback from the community. And these were some of the questions that we had for the participants to help us shape this program. These are obviously not the only things that people will want to comment about, but things that will help us, that we thought of, that will help us design this program. So David, how do you want to handle this?
So, I mean, I put my email in the chat. If you'd like this PowerPoint, I can definitely send it out to you. But these are some of the questions, and we'll post this on our Facebook page, which I will also put in the chat. I would encourage everyone to engage on that page whenever possible to provide feedback, give some concerns, provide your input. There's already been some great engagement, and I love seeing that. I really love how Hartford residents are rallying around this program, but we really do need your input. We know that it cannot be an equitable program unless the community has some stake in it. So we'll post these questions on the page, and if you have a couple minutes, you can definitely respond back with some of your answers.
I'm looking through the chat here, and I just, you know, in terms of Nicole Selmani said, as a teacher, interesting to see what teachers notice. I am really interested to know, like, are children's moods better? Are they sleeping better? Are their grades getting better? You know, are they acting out less or concentrating more at school and at home and things like that, right? These are aspects of positive outcomes for children that are of great interest to me. But again, you know, we're still designing the study. And so just by mentioning that, I see that we are along the same lines. But so, you know, the Stockton study, they had a card, people got once a month. We want to know if once a month and using a card is the best way to do this, and what kind of supports would participants want. I know, Jadira, you had said, benefits counseling is really important because people need to make decisions, know what to do in the event something happens, right? But people may want to have other supports. I was talking about this with my students, actually, a couple of whom live in Hartford, and one of them said, somebody might for the first time be able to put a little money aside for like their retirement, right? And they won't know what to do with it. Could they get advice on that? And so is that the kind of support that people might want, just as an example, right? And then what are the best ways for participants to send reports? So as I mentioned, in the Stockton study, people sent text messages, and then when they used the card, all of the vendors showed up, like when you look at your credit card, right, you see, all the vendors. But then, answering questions in person, over Zoom, over the computer, on paper, like what's going to be the best way for people to participate in responding to those kinds of questions. That's what we want to hear from members of the community.
I see that Felicia said, I think using a debit card is a good way to gain valuable research.
Yep. Thank you. Yeah, I agree. And I think David is working on trying to find a company that will provide them to us, right? And then, this is kind of an open-ended question. What do members of the community hope to learn and achieve from this project? I've shared a little bit of my interests and what I am hoping to learn. We're really interested in hearing what other folks are hoping to get out of this project, because that will help us shape the survey questions, shape the study, and have the maximum input of the Hartford community. And then lastly, the Stockton study involved people who were not recipients, right, not involved in the study, but wanted to participate in some other way to help design the public-facing reports. So when you look at the Stockton study website and you see some of the graphics, folks in the community were part of designing that and saying, hey, this is what people who are not researchers would like to know, and how it's best to report that information to people. And then, of course, the last slide is what are the others questions and suggestions and comments from the folks out there?
Yes, I think this was great information, and we look forward to having participants take the time now to ask questions or share your feedback on anything that you have heard tonight. So please, if you could raise your hand, and I'm not sure if I can see the raising of the hands, but David, if you could help me with that, I would really appreciate it.
And I should stop sharing the PowerPoint now, right? Yeah.
I know we have a question from Andrea, and it says, what are the next general milestones?
So there's two pieces to this. There is designing the program itself, and then designing the research component of it. And we are working on both of those things in different committees. I mean, there's a lot of overlap, obviously. And in terms of the study, one of the things that we have to do is the members of the research committee have to put that together and then receive IRB approval. That's Institutional Review Board approval, in order to demonstrate that this will be done ethically.
I have Mary said she agrees with deposits to debit card every 2 weeks, like a paycheck, and not every month like government checks.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
And then we also have LG, who says, how long would the program last?
David?
So we are initially looking at 1 year. It would potentially launch in July of 2022 and end on June 30th, 2023. Our final report to City Council is due December of this year, so in about 6 months. And in that report, we need to indicate not only the design of the program, what the program would look like, but we also need to develop a sustainability plan and present that to City Council. We need to identify potential funding sources for the program and who would potentially be targeted to participate.
I'm scrolling through some of the questions here that were answered already. But one of the questions was, there was a person who said that he's a single father with 5 children with multiple jobs on committees. And this raises the question of what will be considered as income. And somebody else asked about unemployment. And so the folks starting out will need to demonstrate that they are employed, right? But beyond that, we haven't excluded anything, obviously, legal sources of income. But with that said, if somebody's on unemployment after they start the study, right, that's a different question from someone applying and being on unemployment. And somebody would have to have employment in order to be included in the study at the beginning.
There's also a question from, I'm sorry, I'm trying to see, Constanza, and it says, what is the plan to provide interpretation at these communities info sessions? This way we can spread the word.
That was my question too. Actually, I am not fluent in Spanish, I'm ashamed to say, even though I'm half Puerto Rican. And I know that we have folks in the community who speak Spanish. There are folks in the community who speak Portuguese. I'm not sure what other languages would be important to include. And so that's something that we need to look at.
Yeah, so we have a relationship. So the City of Hartford has a relationship with the Hartford Public Library. They are our partners in providing translation and interpretation services. So the process is pretty simple in that we need to fill out a form, send it into them, and then they will attempt to secure us a translator. For this specific event, we filled out the form. The translator that we normally use was not available. And so what I need to determine is, okay, well, for future events, if HPL is not able to secure us a translator, what other options does the city have? My understanding is that we must go through Hartford Public Library. And so if they can't provide a translator for whatever reason, then obviously, we'll need to rely on some community organizations to provide us with that support, because we don't have anyone in the city who's qualified to provide interpretation services.
I see there's a question from Carol about immigration and immigrants. And I will say that that will be one of the demographic pieces of information that we will ask people. Certainly we won't exclude someone if they have a green card, right? That's not what we're about. If people are undocumented, that is something else that we need to explore.
I want to read a comment from Stephen. It says, I am a teacher in Hartford as well and a Hartford resident. And this UBI pilot is the most exciting thing to come from the city council in a long time for some reasons. This is the type of program that can really change lives, and the time seems right to get funding for it. There is so much wealth disparity in this small state, and we need to build personal and political will to address that inequities by redistributing money. There is another question by Joyce, and she says, how many applicants are you trying to recruit?
So you know, we're always worried about having enough applicants. It increases the robustness of the study when you can randomly sample from a larger group of people who have expressed interest.
Melinda asked, how did you all decide single parents should be the starting target population? Oh, it went away. I guess.
Oh, that's because I'm answering your questions. But
Okay.
you can just turn. So Lydia and Stephen have their hand up. So I'm going to go ahead and allow Lydia to address folks first. 1 second, Lydia.
I'm also wondering if Colleen or Carolyn had anything to add.
Hi, can you? Sorry, for the background noise, I have a 7 and a 4-year-old who have no filter, so it's gonna be some stuff going on in the background that I can't control. But my question was, do you guys have income limits or guidelines right now?
No.
No. And you have no idea of what those will be?
I mean, that's something we'll have to decide as a group. As far as I'm concerned, if somebody has part-time or full-time employment, as long as somebody's employed and a single parent, they will qualify.
Okay, no, that's good. It's just, you know, if I'm doing word of mouth, it's good to, I know a lot of people will say, oh, maybe they'll consider, you know, that I make too much money, because for a lot of benefits, you know, even not too much money is considered, you know, over the limit. So it's just good to know that right now we don't have that. We don't have a limit yet.
Right. I hear you, Lydia.
But that you're considering pretty much every single parent with, right?
There's a report called the ALICE report, Asset Limited, Income Constrained and Employed. And I think that is probably what we're looking at in terms of participants largely. People who are working, who are struggling, but who earn too much to, you know, like that's called the benefits cliff. Right. You earn $1 more and there goes your childcare. Yeah. Right?
Yep.
So I think that's probably who we're going to mostly target.
Perfect. All right. Thank you.
And David, you'll be unmuting the next participant.
Yes. 1 second. So Stephen, go ahead.
Hello, my name is Stefan Palmer. I also have to apologize. I have a 6 and a 5-year-old who won't sit down. Working with children in the benefit cliffs, a lot of what I see in the chat as far as the income levels, people losing benefits, the governor put together 2 Gen with parents to work on these issues for about the last 2 years. We've been working on them, and they do have a chart that they're using right now, similar to Alice, where they are using these same charts now for state assistance, where they raise the income levels. On some income levels, they remove the cap or they remove the restriction. Those studies might be good to use for this as well. And as well, I wanted to say, I know Governor Lamont is big on parents being a part of this work. I've been doing it for 6 years now. How many parents are on your committee?
I don't actually know. That has not come up yet. So it's an excellent question. Regardless of how many people are on the committee at present, 100%, we need the inclusion of parents in the design of this.
Correct. And there is a letter already drafted. I don't know if Governor Lamont did it or someone in his office did it, but it does say stipends cannot be used against anyone's housing, state benefits, and I forgot what the third one was, because that was a big issue with a lot of the parents when they wanted parents to work with 2 Gen, and when the governor put together his task force, parents were worried about their benefit cliffs and so forth. So they did draft a letter with his seal on it. so that when they do get their weekly, or I think they get it per meeting, it's not used against them, because a lot of people worry about the rent going up, losing their stamps, losing their medical. So there is something already created to stop that. And again, reaching out to Tujin might be a good idea.
Because we are a separate entity and a separate program, we're going to have to look into whether we can, in fact, piggyback off of that. But it's definitely something to look into. So thank you.
Gina,
If someone's already done the work for us, then great, you know.
I have a question for you. I know that you, when you first ran down the task force members on your PowerPoint, you said it is subject to change. Would a resident be also considered when those changes are made, if they're made?
David?
Can you repeat the question?
When she went down the PowerPoint, sharing the names of the task force members, she said it could change. Would those changes, be considered, like a resident, be considered to be a part of the task force?
Absolutely. I think that that's one of the reasons why we're doing this tonight. You know, if residents are really interested and have the time, the task force members are 100% volunteering their time. They're receiving absolutely no compensation for this whatsoever. If a resident would love to get involved, I mean, we're happy to have them. And I think that as we continue to engage with the community through this effort specifically, we're always looking for folks to join the task force. If anyone is interested, they can definitely email me, david.grant@hartford.gov. This program is 100% benefiting Hartford residents. But I would say that, you know, if anyone has an interest in volunteering, definitely reach out to me and I can get you started in that process.
Great. Constanza says in this chat, it has to be majority Hartford residents.
I mean, I think that that's always our goal, right? To get Hartford residents to dedicate their time, but there's a lot of need in the city. You know, we're talking about a city that has a little over 120,000 residents, and we engage with folks through NRZ meetings, community meetings, and, you know, we're always out there talking about, you know, the need that we have for resident engagement, but we can't force residents to sign up. And so I think ultimately, you know, with folks working 2 to 3 jobs, it can be tough at times. But again, if someone has an interest in helping us do this work, I'm not going to turn them down. I'm not going to turn them away, especially if they have insight into something that could be really valuable.
Costanza, I see your note here, and you know, I definitely am one of those people who, you know, values the, you know, no research about us without us. You know, that is definitely a cornerstone of my, you know, that's at the base of what I want to do here. And so, to your point, you know, David and his assistants have started, they created a Facebook page. I'm not sure what else they have in the works, but in terms of intentional outreach, 100%, that's something that he, I'm sure, will be prioritizing.
Well, and again, I would just say, because I'm reading over the chat as well. So Dennis, thank you so much. Adam Murphy, which you might know, actually attends the NRZ meetings. And so, you know, we tap the NRZs to help get the word out to residents about events. And I would think that if an NRZ, you know, has the ability to really be a partner with us on this, then obviously that's a relationship that we want to cultivate. But there are no resources, Costanza, to your point. We're no stipends. We're not getting any supplemental income. We have no departments. City Council is not a department. And so really it's me and one other staff member, and he's part-time. So, I mean, coupled the two of us with our task force members, we don't have a lot of resources. And so I think that, you know, we're always looking to our community partners to help get the word out about things. And if you'd like to join us in that work, then obviously I would love to talk with you more offline about it. The question about, at some point, are you going to branch out to other towns? So we work on behalf of the city of Hartford. That's my primary job. That's all I do is work for the city of Hartford. And so in terms of other towns, I do know that there are elected leaders in other cities that have reached out to council president wanting to duplicate this program in their city. And so I will send them information to help get them started, but I don't know what they have in the works. And you know, really that's outside my purview. My goal is to support Hartford residents, and that's what I'll continue to do.
Great, thank you, David. Stephen says, could the Facebook group have a screening question to make sure people who join and participate are Hartford residents?
I don't see why not. I think that, yeah, we can definitely do that. And also, you know, we do have an intern that was just recently brought on board. He's been a tremendous help in even getting the community forum going. And so I think that, you know, myself and Adam will work more with him over the course of the next 2 weeks to really make sure that the Facebook group is, you know, where it needs to be, so that residents feel comfortable engaging on a more regular basis. Because I found that it's been incredibly valuable leading up to the community forum. We've gotten some great input through that group, and I want to continue to use that. But I also recognize that a lot of residents don't use social media and don't have access to the internet, or, you know, don't have reliable, you know, access to a computer, or, you know, just are lacking in the ability to join anything online. And so we are having conversations about, well, our next community forum, we should definitely be in person. And how are we going to make that work? And where are we going to do that? But make no mistake, we have no intention of slowing down in terms of engaging with the community, and we'll only be doing more in the next couple of months.
Yes, that would be great. That was my next question. Are you guys thinking of, you know, what other forums you are going to, you know, continue to do in the future, and where the locations of those forums also will be key, right? Bringing them right into neighborhoods to give some of those folks the opportunity to join the conversation.
I think the only real issue that would stop us from doing anything in person would be COVID. And, you know, we follow the reports just like everybody else and listen to the mandates from the governor.
Yes, absolutely. Any other questions? Great, not seeing any other questions. Oh, well, one more. Lydia says, who should potentially participate? No, I'm sorry. Who should potential participants contact with interest?
So when we are ready, when the program is designed, right, and it has been approved, there will be recruitment efforts, and the recruitment efforts will explain how people can apply. Right now, we're not accepting applications because we don't have a screener tool. We haven't narrowed down the inclusion criteria. We don't have the whole package together yet.
Gina, is funding secure for this program?
So I'll take that. The answer is no, but also potentially yes. So what I would say is in the conversations, and I would also encourage everyone to check out YouTube, the Hartford Public Access Television YouTube page. All of our UBI meetings are made public and are available for folks to watch so that they can, you know, follow along with our work. So keep in mind, I mean, we're looking at almost a year from when this program is going to launch. We have 6 months to produce a final report to be submitted to City Council. In that report, we will have some potential funders already identified, but those funders may change. We may secure a $150,000, you know, grant through a foundation, and over the course of the next year, that may increase to 350, 475. It may decrease to 75,000. We just don't know. Right now, the task force is working off of theoretical situations. And so we are developing multiple plans if we receive this much money, this is the type of program that we can launch. If we receive this kind of money or this much money, then here's what the best program would look like. That will help us as leaders in the city to then go and reach out to our partners and say, hey, we need this much money because our task force says that the most equitable program for X number of participants will cost us, $350,000 or whatever that amount is. So that gives us a number. Right now, when we have those conversations with funders, well, they want to know, how much do you need? We don't know that yet because we haven't designed the program. I think once the program is designed, we'll have a much better idea of how much money we really do need for something like this.
Yes, and to that point, this is precisely why we're having this community forum, is to get the input of the community as part of that design process.
Great, thank you so much. Any final questions or remarks from the task force or from residents?
I again want to ask Colleen and Carolyn, who have not had much opportunity to speak, if there's stuff that they want to add.
Hi, it's Carolyn. Gina, you did a great job. And we all really appreciate everyone's participation and enthusiasm on the call. Just the one thing I would add, which folks have touched on, is, one really important component is gaining trust from the community early on. Because, when you talk about this program, it could feel too good to be true, right? So it would be great to have a lot of feedback from the community on ways, to make sure that Hartford residents trust the program early on, so they'll even, volunteer to enroll in it. So that was one other consideration.
Thank you. And actually, I see a comment here from Mary Sanders. People will apply, but the folks who wind up in the group receiving the funds, and if we have one or two control groups, all of those folks will be randomly chosen and randomly assigned based on meeting the criteria to be in the program in the first place.
Steve also says, I want to make sure that Tiana's point is heard, that outreach is made to people impacted by the criminal justice system when getting input and recruiting participants. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, 100%. Thank you. I see Frederick Chavez Blanco has his hand up.
I'll go ahead and unmute Frederick now.
Hi, good afternoon, good evening rather. I'm a Hartford resident. I had a question in regards to the structure of this system. All like that this conversation is being had. My concern is that we're going to try to build a system using an old mentality of how finances work, and it's kind of not been working on a whole for anyone really, hence why we're always looking and scrambling for money. But has any consideration or thought been given to running this UBI system on a more newer emerging tech to reduce overhead for how this whole program is administered, using blockchain technology, so you can offload your administrative costs, your transactional costs, and probably avoid some financial hurdles that you might otherwise have to deal with if you dealt with just the current cash distribution systems. Something a little bit more akin to like the food stamp system, where you have certain things and necessities, things which expand on, but without having to use that infrastructure that obviously costs a lot of money to maintain, and avoiding that. That's my question.
I'm not sure I know enough about what you're asking to provide a real answer. What I can tell you is that UBI programs are based on the premise that if you give people cash, they will prioritize and choose for themselves how to utilize that cash. And my concern is the digital divide, is that people who don't have access to computers, people who don't have easy access to Wi-Fi, if you're asking them to use blockchain technology, they may not have access to the technology.
Oh, okay. There have been some strides made in that stuff. I mean, that stuff is accessible by anyone who's got a cell phone nowadays. And you don't need any high-end device or anything. So it is an avenue I personally think that needs to be investigated thoroughly, because there are newer options to help reach these goals and make them sustainable in the long term, and not constantly be running around looking for funding. If we can make a little ecosystem where this can actually sustain itself, you know.
Okay, I really appreciate that feedback, and that's something that I'm sure David and the city council would have to look into. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Frederick. We have Melinda in the chat who says the foster care system might be a great area to find referrals, considering how many child neglect cases are in single parent situations, and neglect is often caused by not having enough money. And then she says for biological single parents engaged in reunification and not for foster parents. And she adds foster parents will be most likely already be receiving appropriate funding from the government. And I do know if they would lose their benefits they receive from agreeing to foster.
So in child welfare, people receive the funds to be a foster parent directly from the foster care agency that they're contracted with to care for that child or those children while they're in their home, right? And so that's another good question about income requirements and restrictions and concerns about protection. So I'm really glad that you brought that up. Thank you. And yeah, I mean, people wind up having a harder time because they're stressed and they take it out on the people around them. And so, you know, one of the ways to reduce child abuse and neglect is to eliminate poverty, right? It's not the only way, but that's one major thing. And so it's a really good question to focus on.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I'm really so appreciative of everyone's questions, insights, ideas, resources. This is very exciting for me. And I know it will be for the other members of the committee who were not able to be here today. And I echo Carolyn in thanking people so much for being a part of this. Truly, it's an honor to, excuse me, it's an honor to represent the committee that's putting all of this together. To be part of this project and to be serving the city of Hartford.
Great, thank you for being able to share all this great information with us tonight. There is one question from Lindsay in the chat, and it says, is there a plan or thought to include mental health supports with?
So that was actually part of the questions that we were asking people to provide answers to, which is what kind of supports would participants want. I see no reason why we would not be able to have a list of referrals for mental health supports. It would not be appropriate for us to provide mental health support. Like, I couldn't be a researcher and be someone's mental health counselor, right? That's a dual relationship. But to have those resources available for folks who want referrals. That's very important. So thank you.
Okay, so with that being said, I just want to thank everyone again for participating tonight. My email is in the chat. You're welcome to send me an email. If you're interested in volunteering on the task force, please send me an email with your resume and I will follow up. If you would like the presentation that we covered tonight, please send me an email and I will send it to you. If you'd like to get in touch with anyone on the task force on specific points that were covered, send me an email and I'll connect you with the appropriate person. I want to thank Gina, Carolyn, and Colleen for their work on the task force, for volunteering their time to serve the city of Hartford. And I also want to thank Jadida for volunteering to moderate this conversation. We could not do this without all of you. And again, I'm really excited about this program and I hope that you all are as well. Thanks so much, everyone. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank
Have
you.
a good night, everyone.
Bye-bye.